Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who has built his business by leaning into relationships, team structure, and intentional growth while constantly evolving how he serves both clients and partners, from scaling through strategic hires to creating leverage through systems and events. He brings a thoughtful approach to building a sustainable mortgage business. Sebastian Bolivar, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to have you on here because I was doing a little bit of back research and just sort of, trying to familiarize myself a little bit with you. I went to your consumer access page. I noticed that, you're a young guy, so like you still have your middle school experience listed on your NMLS page. I was like, wow, all right, man, we're going all the way back to middle school. So, but I love that because it just speaks to like how, when you lock in and when you get into sort of like flow state and you understand how to build the business, it doesn't matter how young or old you are, it's achievable. And so like I wanted to call that out because I think it's great that we've got some real, cool up and coming young loan officers really like doing it right now. So anyway, so hats off to you, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
So
Absolutely.
jumping right in, like as we were getting to know each other, you had mentioned that starting your career, you kind of started supporting a top producing originator before kind of getting into your own business and running things, independently. How did that experience kind of shape how you think about building a team and running it the way you run things today?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it changed everything for me. And I was very fortunate to be in that environment because it allowed me to see the power of strength in numbers, right? So when I came into the business, I stumbled into it like everybody else, but I started as a junior processor. So it's like an assistant to a processor. And I really enjoyed the sales side of the business, like being in the office. Back then, everybody was in the office. So just seeing what the sales guys were going through. And I was like, hey, I want to be a part of this. So thankfully, she allowed me to be on her team, become a loan partner or an LOA, as most people call it. And it was great because I was surrounded with guys. There was about 5 of us on the team, and experience ranged from 20 years in the business to 5 or 10 years in the business. So coming in as the youngest guy in the group, I just became a sponge, and I started learning from all of them, different scripting, and we all sat in the same room. We called it the cave. So all day you could hear everybody on the phones, you could hear different things being said, and we would copy things from each other of what scripts were. We'd motivate each other, right? When somebody got an application in or they got a pre-approval out, it made everybody else want one. It was very old school, but it allowed me to see the value in having a team, having people that you could bounce ideas off of, but also being able to see that while we were able to nurture the loans, our loan officer was able to go out there and continue bringing the leads in. So it was a very assembly line sort of system where the business was always continuing to flow. And the better we did at pre-approving them, the less she had on her plate in terms of staying in the office. So she was able to be out there and create a bigger impact out in the field. So from the beginning, I didn't always want to go and do her role, right? I didn't know if I wanted to be an originator. But as time went on and I started gaining more confidence in my abilities and in knowing, we were cranking out. Personally, I was doing already like between 100 to 200 loans a year on her team, where we were taking loans from application all the way to closing. So I saw so many scenarios that I would have never gotten the chance to see if I was just doing this on myself, working, 10 or 15 leads a month.
Right.
So
Yeah. Huge
that allowed me
advantage.
to have a lot more confidence when it was time to go out in the field. And like, I really knew my stuff, where people doing this 10, 20 years maybe hadn't even seen as many scenarios as I had. So
Mhm.
it was amazing. I credit a lot of my success to that experience.
Yeah, I love that, man. We see that sort of come up over and over again on the lowdown, and just that getting into the business in a high production environment really does breed high production originators. So I think it's awesome that you got that. It's a big head start. Now, You had mentioned that there was a point in time where you sort of felt stuck in production, and before really kind of making a major jump in things, it looked like maybe somewhere between 24 and 25. What changed in your mindset or within the environment that allowed you to really kind of break through that plateau?
Yes, so that's a great question. So I, I had been originating for 3 years, and I had been at I had already had probably about 4 or 5 years in the business as a loan officer assistant. I went off on my own and originated for about 3 years, and I was kind of hitting a plateau. Right, I had all this knowledge of how to run a team, how to go get sales, how to close loans, but it wasn't translating. I knew everything I needed to do, but I wasn't getting the results. And yeah, I was going out to open houses every weekend, and I was inviting realtors out to coffee, and I was doing everything that on paper should result in loans. And I was growing my business, but very slow. I think my first year I did 12 or 15 loans. My second year, I think I did about 24, and then my third year about 36. So I was like adding one loan a month as I progressed. But I was very frustrated because I felt like with all the knowledge that I had, I was coming from closing 10 to 20 loans a month to 2 to 3, right? So I decided to make a change. When I joined Rate, it really did open my eyes to what was possible because at that point, I think the year before I came, I had done about 7 million. And my goal when I came to Rate was, okay, let's double it. Let's go for 15 million, right? And then I showed up my first week, and this was right after rates had hit about 8% in 2023. Things were, not looking good. A lot of realtors were just getting out of the business and doing some other stuff. And I had to restart my book of business essentially. I really only had about two agents that I brought with me that stayed in the business and stayed doing consistent work. I had a huge database of clients and agents I had reached out to, but wasn't really getting any traction. And I remember about a month in, I was just going really hard, making a lot of calls, booking lots of appointments. And I think I got about 2 or 3 contracts within a week. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, I'm off to a great start. And then our regional manager for Rate sent out a email with like the leaderboard of how many closings or how many locks everybody had. So I locked in these 3 loans. I was feeling great about myself. And then he sends this leaderboard of everyone in our region, not even in the company, just the region. And I was probably like 17th on the list. And I was like, oh my God, like I had this great week in my head, and I'm looking and like I'm not even close to being anywhere near the top of the range. So that really opened my eyes to say, okay, what are they doing that I'm not, right? And that's where I really locked in. And the first thing that really changed my success was just opening my mind to what was possible.
Hmm.
So to me, 3 loans a month, 5 loans a month was the goal. But then when I see people are doing 3 or 5 loans a week, right? Some people were doing 3 to 5 loans a day. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait a second, there's something else out there, right? These people don't have giant mega teams. Some of them have maybe one assistant or no assistants, and they're putting out this much production. So that changed my mindset to, okay, now I need to challenge myself and I need to aim bigger, right? Like I need to one go way bigger on the goals that I'm setting for myself, but then also raise the bar on the expectations of what I think is great, right? So that allowed me to change my mindset and really like dig in, and I start working even harder on prospecting. So I try to book even more meetings. I try to make even more calls. And then the other thing that credit to my success is I started being very intentional with who I was meeting. So I wasn't just taking any agents out to coffee. I started using certain software that allowed me to see who in my area was actually doing business, actually closing loans. And then I would start creating a relationship with these people, whether through social media or getting to see who they knew that I knew who could present a connection. And then not only trying to find agents that were doing production, but agents that I felt like I could get along with, that we had something similar, where we shared some sort of values or some sort of mindset. And that really made the difference because now these meetings were more about connecting with these people and seeing how I could provide value to them, as opposed to just, hey, you're a realtor, I'm a lender, we should work together, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the trajectory of where it started to scale. And then from there, the momentum just allowed me to explode.
Yeah, well, I love the intentionality of it all, the thinking larger, giving yourself permission to do that, and not just seeing it and thinking, oh, that's just for them, that's not for me, but saying, okay, if they can, I can, and I'm going to set a higher goal and then figure out how to get there. And this is something that I've been reading about a lot lately, which is just this concept of the impossible goal, right? Like realizing that, hey, if I set my sights higher, it's going to make me think differently than just what a linear goal would look like, right? If I wanted to do 20% more volume, then I'm probably going to just say I need to give 20% more effort. But if I want to do 200% more volume, well, that changes the game entirely. And so it sounds like that had the same impact for you, where you said, okay, I'm going to do more. I see more. I can now, focus on different referral partners and be more strategic about the way I operate and really start to understand like the rules of engagement and of the game to get to where I want to go. So a part of that though, then turned into like building a team around you. So hiring new team members kind of sounded like it was a difficult first step. I mean, a lot of people struggle with that. What like fears or challenges did you have to work through when you started like investing in leverage?
That's a good question. So the fear was the first part, right? Like the fear of, okay, now I have a team, right? How am I going to pay for this, or my income's going to take a hit? But getting over that first hire was the biggest piece. Understanding that, look, I can't keep working 16 hours a day and growing my business is just not sustainable. So once I made that first hire, understanding that, okay, the whole point of this is to take more off my plate so that I can focus on continuing to further the business. That, of course, is understood, but then just really learning how to let go of some things, right? And then constantly checking. So, me and my loan partner, the first person I hired was somebody in the business who had experience closing loans, and we had the understanding that like I tag him, you bag him, right? Like we talked about. So I would help bring in the loans in. He would help me review the applications. That would save me about an hour per client, and then I would still go in, review. We'd talk about it together, how he saw the files versus some of the experience that I had, where we could get maybe a little bit more creative on how we structured the loans. And then that allowed us to, he started understanding our flow and the way that I look at loans, the way that we structure our loans. And from there, we were continuously growing, getting more consistent to the point where, I tripled my business in the first year. And that's when I said, okay, I need to bring somebody else on. And then from there, in the first 6 months, we had already matched what I did the year before. So I was taking another step back and going, okay, how can we perfect this system and how can we continue to scale? So that's where I took a lot of there. There's so many great coaching programs out there, but I credit there's two kind of theories that I followed to help me figure out who I needed to hire and how to hire them. Right. So number one was the loan atlas. Tim Brahim talks about his perfect loan process, where he writes down every single step that happens from when you get introduced to a client all the way through after closing, and every single thing that happens in the process, who does what and who's in charge of what and how is it done. So then I spent a long time perfecting my loan process. How does it work right now? Who's responsible for what? How does it happen? When does it happen? And then the second thing I did was something Sean, which is something that pretty much every great business coach will also give. But Sean, the president of our company, he gave us a quadrant, which is, love, like, hate, and dislike, right? Or you could think of it in another form of, impact, right? Like highly impactful, impactful, low impact, and then not impactful at all, right? So what I did then was I categorized each of these steps in my loan process into things that are highly impactful for the business. Is this going to lead to business growth? And if it didn't, if it was something more admin related, that's where, I had to take a step back and go, this is something I shouldn't be doing if we want the business to continue growing. So having that perfect loan process, figuring out the way we're doing things, and then figuring out which one of these steps do I no longer need to do so that I can focus more time on continuing to grow the business. And that's what allowed me to create the job descriptions of who I needed to hire and then go out and hire those people.
Yeah. Well, you're like a living example of 10x is easier than 2x. I don't even know if you've read that book, but if you haven't, like, you don't really need to. Uh, so you're shedding all the 80% of activities that don't serve your 20% and really living kind of in your zone of genius, so to speak. So I think that's wonderful, man. To anyone who just heard that breakdown, like rewind, listen to it again, because if you feel like you're stuck or just burning out, that is a practice that I think would free you from feeling that way and get you back into where you're focused on the things that you love about this job and are able to then scale what it is you love about this job and do it at a higher level. And ultimately, good things follow that. So I want to take one step back to kind of what you were talking about with your referral partners because you got real strategic about that. You started sort of, skinnying down the people that you would meet with because you did more research and it's just a qualitative versus quantitative approach. But then you did one other thing, which was kind of coaching them on the ideal introduction of you, which I think is essential to a good like handoff and the triangle of trust moment. How did you do that? Like what were sort of the things that you focused on there and what change did you notice after that started to be implemented?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I did, in the beginning, I found myself chasing a lot of leads because someone would get referred to me and then they wouldn't apply or they wouldn't answer my calls. So I was wasting a lot of time, not just for me, but for the agent. So I started having feedback with my agents like, hey, how did you meet these people, right? That's important to know. Is it a personal friend or is it a Zillow lead, right? Or is it someone who clicked on an ad? Because then that'll detail, okay, how much do they trust your recommendations, right? So it allows me to one, be able to edify my agent a lot more or create that triangle of trust once I do get somebody on the phone. But then secondly, explaining to my agents the value of us being partners, right? So it's not just, hey, here's three names on a list, call whichever one will give you the best rate, which sure, clients should shop around and see who can do that. But there's a reason why you refer me, right? There's a reason why you're giving out my name instead of, hey, go Google three names. There's a reason we work together. So leaning into that expertise is one, going to create less confusion for the client because now instead of just being like, well, who do I call? If you say, hey, I need you to call Sebastian and get pre-approved because his team's going to make sure that you don't have any issues once you go under contract. They're going to make sure your EMD is not at risk and they're going to make sure that you can win your offer because it'll be as good as cash since it's fully underwritten. So like explaining the benefits of that allowed clients to be more excited to talk to me instead of seeing me as a roadblock in between getting the house that they want. So now they see us as a tool to help them get what they want.
Yeah.
That was the first.
I think
Yeah.
that's phenomenal, man. Like everybody should write that down, listen to that tip. I mean, how you're introduced influences the rest of the relationship. And so if you're not paying attention to that key part of the process, then I would suggest that you do. Now, another part of like your growth and, the way that you're marketing is through events, and that's become a part of the strategy. But from talking with you, you've taken on a more specific approach with that too, where you're focused more on like smaller intentional gatherings that are more like partnership sort of deepening type of events instead of just sort of creating an activity out there. Like how has that shift been effective for you?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So events it could seem scary, right? Like, you have to put all this stuff together. What if no one shows up? What if you spend a bunch of money and then don't get a return? So you do have to be very strategic with your event, right? So anything as simple as a lunch and learn. You don't have to rent out a whole room and invite 30 or 40 people, although that's nice. I found that with the smaller, more intimate events, one, people are less shy, so then they can ask more questions. They feel more inclined to ask questions to whoever the presenter is. And then secondly, I think when you do those more intimate events, it's less expensive, so it's easier to get ROI. But then two, like you can spend more time really connecting with people individually. So even something as simple as, maybe if there's an agent that you really want to go after, a coffee is going to take you maybe 15, 20 minutes. Where if you go to lunch, you're sitting down with them for at least an hour. So something like that could be considered an event, right? Let's go to lunch, let's connect, let me get to learn about you as a human being instead of just as a realtor. And that's had a big impact. Or, if you don't go after realtors, a financial advisor, a CPA, whatever it may be, but just getting to know people deeper is gonna help that relationship long term. So that's been huge. Planning the events, of course, is very time consuming. Luckily, like I have an events team that helps me do that. So they'll help find the catering or the location or whatever I need to do. But I think just being able to show people that you can provide value and give them something that they need that's going to help their business or help their growth. That's the most important thing, is that when people come see you or hear about you, or see your post or whatever it may be, it's like, man, he's always providing value, right? And I think the law of reciprocity will take care of the rest.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Keep showing up, keep doing the right things, keep pouring into the relationship. Because this is really like a business about being well positioned for when the timing is right, right? And not necessarily about wins and losses, but just always sort of being the go-to because you've built the foundation for being the obvious choice when the time is right to need a go-to. So I think that's phenomenal feedback and advice there. Now, you've shared a lot about just sort of how you grew your business and some of the things that you've done to this point. What are you focused on for the future? Like, what are the things that you are now saying, okay, I've taken these steps to get more strategic in the way I prospect. I've done this. I've built out this team. Like, what's next for you? Because you don't strike me as someone who's just gonna settle right now.
Yeah, great question. So I think right now I'm all in on just empowering my team as much as possible, continuing to train them and get them to really, one, trust in their ability, but two, start thinking about loans the way that I think about them. So, I try my best to never have to deny a client. We always give a client a path to be able to become a homeowner, or if they're looking to refinance, a path to be able to do that. So I think just continuing to let the team evolve to a point where, hey, maybe I don't need to focus as much time reviewing their work, right? And then I can spend more time on growth, I think is important. I'm not really too focused on growing too fast right now because I do want it to be a sustainable growth. So I think right now it's more so like continuing to deepen the relationships that I currently have, seeing how I can support my agents more, seeing how I can help them grow a referral based business as well. And then it's not necessarily, sometimes less is more, right? So it's not about gathering more agents, but more so the agents that have been loyal to me and that do work with me. Like, how can I help them grow their business and help them get at least 2 or 3 more transactions a year, right? If I can help them, whether through we host events together, whether we farm their database and help them continue to gather more leads or more referrals or whatever it may be, like that's what I'm all in on. So that way their success will equal my success.
Yep. Increasing the quality of your referral partners and partnerships will increase the quantity of the leads and the volume of your business. I think that's a great um, call out there. Last question, man. I don't know if I've asked you all the questions or if is there any bit of advice though that you'd like to share with a loan officer that might be feeling a little stuck and wants to get out of that rut and start moving towards building a more design into their business?
Yeah. You can't do it alone, right? Like even right now is the Olympics. Great example. Every one of those athletes is world class, but they all have a coach. So I think finding someone that you can invest, that you'll get a return, right? Where they're going to give you the tools you need to grow and your support, but make sure you find a coach, or you don't even have to invest in a coach. You can go in within your own organization, right? And look at who the top producers are and ask them for help. And if they're not willing to help, go find somebody else who can help, right? There's always going to be someone that you can sit down for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and just pick their brain on what worked for them, and then figure out what's going to work for you. And I think that's been my biggest like secret to success is I'm not afraid to ask for help. So if I see someone doing something that I see works, I'm going to reach out to them and I'm going to say, hey man, hey, can I pick your brain for 10 minutes, right? Can I pick your brain for 15 minutes? And you don't know how many people have been so excited to help or be like, yeah, man, no one's asked me this before. Absolutely, I'm willing to help. And it's more so like sometimes we're too afraid to just ask. And that translates to your business. If you can't even ask people within your organization for help, how are you going to go out and ask a realtor for business, right? Hey, is there someone you need help with pre-approving? If you can't do that, you see my dog walking away.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, like if you can't truly invest in yourself and in your business, then how are you going to help other people invest and grow in theirs?
Yeah. Well, here's what I heard. Have the hard conversation, right? Like admit that you need it and be willing to talk to someone. I think in our business, and it's unfortunate sometimes when you really stop and think about it, but in my role, I talk to a lot of people who might just be running from a tough conversation that if they just had the conversation where they were and talked through it and said, "Hey, I need some help with this, or this needs to change, or I'm not happy with the way this is going," they wouldn't have to, turn over their entire life and career and make these big changes. And, it's not always necessary, I guess is what I'm saying. And so sometimes just being willing to have those conversations, ask for help, speak up,
Yeah.
and you'd be surprised at, how many people actually want to help you too. I mean, you don't have to do this alone. The mortgage business can be very isolating sometimes, especially now that we're not really in offices together and kind of
Yeah.
having that synergy. But listen, man, that's great advice. I just want to say thank you, Sebastian, for being on the lowdown. You're a really impressive guy. Excited to see where your, career trajectory goes. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. But like, thanks for, joining and sharing your story. It's really awesome to get all that out today.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. And, anything I can do to continue to help people just reach their potential, I'm happy to do so.
Absolutely, man. Well, thanks a bunch. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Connor. Likewise.